So I'm playing Arma 3 and I have a group of soldiers. I'm able to select one soldier, for example, with F2. I'm selecting the second group member and I can give it an order to move to a position by pointing to that position and pressing the use key.
Move 100 meters, front. On the way.
So you can see in the bottom left of the screen, we have an interface that shows all the group members. So we have an icon for the group member and below it we have the current order of that group member. I can select all group members and give them an order. So for example, I can give them the order to regroup.
Return to formation. Solid copy.
And they will all go to their position in the formation. I can also select all group members and give them the order to stop.
Halt. Understood.
You can see that in the interface, they have the stop order below their icon. So we're going to do something similar in Unity. We're going to implement an interface that displays an icon for each group member. And below each icon, we're going to display the current order of that group member. And also we're going to streamline the order given interface. Our first order of business is to give our characters names. Let's go to our NPC script. In scripts, NPC, then NPC. Let's go to the top and let's add a name field. Let's add some headers to organize these fields in the inspector. So we're going to have locomotion parameters and it's going to have the can move, can turn, walk speed, run speed, the velocity, direction, the grid position. Let's put the faction up here and let's put both the name and the faction under character parameters. Okay, so the inspector looks better, but we're not going to waste our time setting the property for each character here. Instead, what we're going to do is have a text file with a bunch of names and the NPC script will choose a random name from that list of names. Okay, so in the AI Mastery root folder, let's create a new folder called resources. In here, let's create a new folder called AI Mastery. Let's double click on it. I'm going to right click here, then show in Explorer, and I'm going to click on the folder. And here I'm going to create a text file. Let's call it character names.txt. Let's open it. So I asked ChatGPT to generate a list of female and male names. So we have female names here like Mia, Lena, Diana, Emily, etc. And then at the bottom, we have male names, Nick, Victor, Tom, George, etc. Okay, so in total we have 101 names. Okay, so we have the character names inside resources AI Mastery. And the resources folder is very important because it's a special folder in Unity and we can access anything in that resource folder using the resources class. And Unity has methods to access the content of the resources folders. Let's go to scripts, game managers. And here let's add a new class. Let's call it character names manager. We don't need to inherit from monobehavior. In here, let's have a static list of names that we're going to set to null by default. And let's define a public static method, getRandomName. This will return a random name from the list of names. First, we're going to check if the list of names is null. So if the list of names is null, we're going to load it. We're going to load the text file containing the names, and it's going to be a text asset. And we're going to use resources.load with text asset as the type. And we're going to give it the path inside of the resources folder. So the path is AI Mastery / character names without the extension. First, let's initialize the list of names. Let's make sure that we found the text file. So if names file is null, we're going to print an error and return something. So if a character is named error, we'll know that we had an error loading this text file. Then we're going to get the array of names using namesfile.text.split. We need to give the split method an array of characters that it will use to split the text. In this case, we give it \n and \r. These are the characters for a new line. And we give it the string split option to remove empty entries. Then let's add the names array to our names list using add range. We have just loaded the list of names, and down here we're actually going to pick a random name. So let's pick an index using random range from 0 to names.count, and we're going to return the name at that index. Okay, let's go back to our NPC script. In the onEnable method, let's set the name field to character names manager dot get random name. Okay, I'm running the game. So here we have our created NPC. So I'm going to select one. So this one is called Ryan. This one is called Ulysses. This one is called Quinn. So indeed, each character has a random name. Now let's create the group UI. Let's go to the second scene view, the 2D view. Let's disable post-processing in the scene view. Let's create a member icon. So I'm going to just copy a button. So we have the change faction button here. I'm going to Control D to duplicate it, then move it to this side. So we don't need it to be a button. So I'm going to remove the button component. Let's pick a sprite with a background. So as a reminder, all of these sprites are coming from Kenny's awesome UI kit. So I'm going to choose this one, panel 5. Let's make sure to slice it. So I'm going to select it in the project, then go into the sprite editor. So let's have 33 in each border. Let's hit apply. Okay, so back to our button. Let's rename it to group member icon. So in the image type, I'm going to select sliced, and I'm going to change the color. Let's make it darker. As for the text, let's rename it to name, and let's duplicate it and rename it to order. So let's move the order below the name, something like this. Let's just change the text properties. So for example, if we have a move order, it will be displayed like this. As for the name, so let's change the text to a name. Let's go to the UI folder, prefabs, and let's save this as a prefab. Let's go to the heads up display, and let's right click and create a new empty. Let's call it player group UI. Let's go to the anchor presets and press in Alt. I'm going to make this stretch over the screen. Then I'm going to resize it and put it to the left side here, like in Arma. Then I'm going to add a grid layout. So we can add a horizontal layout here, but I like grids. They're versatile. So let's put our icon here. So our group member icon, let's put it under the player group UI, and let's see how it's displayed. So this is a little bit too small. So let's go to the cell size and choose a bigger size. Yeah, let's choose a size of 150 by 100. Let's duplicate the group member icons a bunch of times, just to see how they look like if we have a lot of group members. Let's change the padding to make it look better. So we'll give it a bit of padding on the left, like 100 pixels on the left, and let's give them a spacing of 25. Let's set child alignment to upper left. Let's work on this icon prefab. So perhaps we can have the order text be a little higher. So let's move it up a little bit. Yeah, something like this. And let's reduce the font size. Something like 16 should look better. And let's save it and go back. So perhaps this group UI is a little bit too high. Let's make it smaller. Okay, this looks better. So let's go to scripts UI, and let's add a new script called player group UI. So this is different from player group control UI, which is a script that controls this panel where we change the group, add new members, etc. This is the player group heads up display. Let's also add a group member icon, and here we'll have a reference to the name and order texts. So let's make sure to import TM Pro, as these will be of type TextMesh Pro UGUI. And let's add a few methods to change the interface of this group member icon. First, let's add a set name that will set name.text. Then let's add two methods, one for hiding the order, which will deactivate the order's game object, and set order, which will activate the order game object and set order.text to the order that we give it in the parameters. So let's go back to our group member icon. We're going to enter the prefab mode, and here I'm going to add our script group member icon. Let's put it at the top, and I'm going to assign the name and order fields. So here we have our name, TextMesh Pro UGUI, and then our order. Okay, so the prefab is set. Let's go back to the player group UI, and let's add our player group UI here. Okay, let's edit the code. Let's have a reference to the group member icon prefab. Let's call it icon prefab. So we're going to be instantiating this prefab and adding the instances as children of the prefab of player group UI. Let's define a destroy all icons method that we're going to call in the awake method. We're going to loop through the list of children from the last child to the first child. So we're going to use an inverted for loop. Then we're going to get the child using transform.getChild at the index I. Then we're going to destroy child.gameObject. Then let's define an update method. In here, we're going to invoke an update UI method that we're going to define here. So in update UI, we'll get a reference to the player. The way to get the reference to the player is by using UIManager.instance.player. In case the player controller is null or player.character.group is null, we're going to return, but first let's define a list of icons. We need to store the list of group member icons because it will be useful in a lot of ways. So in destroy all icons, here we're going to clear the list of icons. Then in update UI, if player is null or player character group is null, if we have icons, we're going to destroy them all. Then we need to know if the number of icons that we need to render has changed. Let's define a player group variable. So this is just a shortcut rather than type in player.character.group. So we're going to check if icons.count is different from player group.member count. In this case, we're going to destroy all the icons and create them. So to create the icons, we're going to use a for each. So for each member in player group.members, we're going to instantiate the icon prefab and set the parent to our own transform. So let's put the result in an icon variable and let's add a new icon to our icons list. Okay, so at this point, we have a number of icons that match the members of the group. So we're going to loop through the members using a for loop. So for I, going from 0 to player group.member count, let's get the icon with icons at I and the member using player group.members at index I. Then we're going to call icon.setName and give it member.name and icon.setOrder and give it the order of the member. So I changed my mind with this method. So we're going to change it. No need to have a hide order method. So we're going to change set order and give it the order object here. If order is null or order.type is set to none, we're going to deactivate the orders game object. Otherwise, we're going to activate the orders game object and set order.text to order.type.toString. Okay, let's test our code. So in player group UI, first we need to make sure that icon prefab is set. So let's go to content, UI, prefabs, and set group member icons here. So all these icons will be destroyed at runtime, so we don't have to worry about them. Let's run the game. Okay, so let's create a group. So apparently my name is Quentin and the order is set to none, which is not supposed to happen, but anyway, let's spawn a new NPC. Okay, so I have my group here and we have the names of each member here and the order is apparently set to none. So let's give them a move order with our old interface. So we need to point somewhere, then press F2 and here they all have the move order, even my own character. Okay, let's press F1. So you can see that they have none since I ordered them to return to the group. Oh yeah, so here in set order in group member icon, we need to return actually. So as soon as we set the object to inactive, we need to return. So here in player controller, it seems that I made a mistake in the last video. So if the order is different from hold, then actually we need to give the hold order. And if we have the hold order, we need to cancel the current order. So anyway, this is temporary. We will replace this code soon. So with these changes, I'm going to press F1. So you can see that all group members have the hold order. Then I'm going to press F1 again. So the order text is invisible here and they're all following me. Let's give them a move order. Let's go to the pause menu, then press F2 while pointing at a location in space. So now they all have the move order. Perhaps for the background here, we can make it a little bit more transparent. So let's go to group member icon. Let's go into the prefab mode. Let's go to the color of this image and let's reduce the alpha a little bit. Something like 65 or 70. should be fine. And in the setNumber method, we're going to set number.text to number to string. Back to the player group UI, when we update the icons, we'll also set the number to i+1. Back to the editor, we're still in the prefab mode for the group member icon. So I'm going to assign the number text mesh pro UGUI and save, and let's go back. So here in the player group UI, perhaps to have an interface similar to Arma, we can decrease the cell size. So if we decrease the cell size to something like 65, this should make the background cover the name. Let's go into the prefab for the icon and adjust the number. Let's have the anchor relative to the top and put the number here. And let's do the same for the order. Let's have the anchor set to the bottom and let's move it up a little bit. Setting the anchors properly will make it so that when we change the cell size in our grid layout, the number and order text will remain at the correct position. Okay, so let's set the cell size to 65 and let's test our new code. Okay, so our icons are displaying the number of each member in the group. Okay, now let's improve our order given interface by making it possible to select the group member and give them a specific order. So let's go to our player controller prefab. We're going to add a new script for handling orders. Let's call this script player order controller. Let's go into the player controller prefab and we're going to add our player order controller here. So let's edit the player order controller script. In our player order controller script, let's require a component of type player controller to make sure that this script is added alongside a player controller. Let's have a reference to our player controller that we're going to get in an awake method. Let's add a shortcut player character that will return player controller.character. On our player controller, we're going to add a mode, which will be an FSM. So the player controller can be in the normal mode or it can be in the move order mode. Let's add a player controller mode, which will be an enum with value set to normal and move order. To keep this organized, I'm adding a region modes. Let's add a player controller mode variable. Let's call it mode to the player controller. To keep things organized, I'm going to have a region modes. Let's have a public property mode that will return our private mode. And let's have a method change mode, which will set the mode and handle entering and exiting the mode. Let's move on order hold and on order move to the player order controller class. So in here, let's create a region. Let's call it input callbacks. Let's make sure to import Unity Engine.input system. So here we need a reference to NPC. So actually what we can do is instead of using player character, let's simply use NPC. That way this code will work. Now back to player controller. Let's move the ground layers and the move order effects to our new script. We no longer need them here. Let's move them up here. We're going to change the behavior of the move order. So when the order move button is pressed, we're not going to actually issue the move order. So let's comment this code out. So what we're going to say, first, if the input is not pressed, or if we don't have a group, or if our character is not the group leader. So this is an OR. So as I said, if our character is not the group leader, we're going to return. Then we need to switch the player controller to the move order in case we are not in the move order. So if player controller.mode is different from move order, we're going to call change mode and set the mode to move order. So my idea here is to display a gizmo for the position of each follower that we order to move, but we're not going to do this now. Right now, let's go back to player controller. Let's go to on attack. So this method will be called every time we click to shoot. We will only be changing the value of attacking. If we are in the normal mode, let's scroll all the way to the change order method, or the change mode method, I mean. So here we need to reset the value of attacking. So in case we are changing the mode and the player is shooting, we don't want attacking to be stuck to a value of true. When we change the mode, we will reset attacking. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is copy the onAttack method and have it in the player order controller script. So let's go to input callbacks and I'm going to have it here. And here we're going to check if input is pressed and player controller is in the move order mode. So here we'll execute the move order. So let's call a method execute move order and let's make the player controller go back to the normal mode. So let's implement the execute move order method. So in this method, we're actually going to do what we've been doing here. So let's copy this code. So we're going to get array from the mouse position and we're going to use physics raycast using the ground layers and we're going to call members move order on our group and instantiate the move order effect. So I'm not going to instantiate the move order effect. Let's just see if this works. So in the player controller prefab, let's set the ground layers on player order controller to default and let's remove ragdoll and character controller. Okay, so I'm going to press F2, then click somewhere. And as you can see, we have issued a move order to where we were looking. I'm going to press F2 again and click somewhere, even if I'm not aiming. Okay, now let's display a gizmo for the position of each group member. Let's start by displaying one gizmo and then we can display a gizmo for each group member. So let's define two fields, move gizmo prefab and a list of game objects for the move gizmos in onOrderMove. Let's call a method here called create move gizmos and in onAttack when we are executing the move order, then we're going to destroy the move gizmos. So let's call a destroy move gizmos method and let's define both of these methods. In create move gizmos, we're going to instantiate a move gizmo prefab. Let's set the parent to this object's transform and let's add it to the list of move gizmos. And in the destroy move gizmos method, we're going to loop through the list of move gizmos, then destroy the game objects. So here I know that gizmo is a game object for now, but just in case we replace it by a component, then we actually need to destroy the game object of that component, not the component itself. So just to be safe, I'm using destroy on gizmo.gameObject. Then we're going to clear the list of move gizmos. Let's scroll back to the top. Let's add a vector tree here. Let's call it move order position and let's add an update method. So here, if player controller mode is set to move order, we're going to update the move order position. And actually we're going to use the same code that we're using in the execute move order method. So I'm going to copy this and put it here. So we're going to have array, and if the raycast is successful, then we're going to set move order position to hit that point. And right now we have one move gizmo. So I'm going to set the position of that move gizmo to move order position. And let's scroll down to execute move order. So here, no need to do a raycast again. We can simply say members move order to move order position. So let's remove this code. Back to the editor, we need a move gizmo prefab. So I'm going to create it. Let's right click on the scene, 3D object. Then let's add a cylinder. Okay, so this is the move gizmo. I'm going to resize it. Let's give it a green material and remove the capsule collider. We already have materials for the uniforms. So let's just duplicate this and put it in the materials folder. Let's call it mMoveGizmo and give it a green color and a green emissive color and assign it to the MoveGizmo cylinder. So the emission will really help it stand out. So we'll keep it this way. Let's call the object MoveGizmo and save it in the prefabs folder. Okay, so we can delete it. Then we need to go into the player controller prefab and assign the move gizmo prefab here, and we should be good to go. So I have my group here. I'm going to press F2. So you can see that the move gizmo is visible. So it will be set at the location where I'm raycasting. And when I click, so it's a bit hard to see with the player in the way, but when I aim, it's much more visible. So I'm going to click and my characters will have the move order and they will move to the position that I set. Let's press F2 again and click and my characters will go. So for the execution of the move order on the character behavior tree, perhaps we need to make them run to the move position, but this is a small detail. Okay, so now let's work on adding one move gizmo for each character. Okay, so for this, we need to actually use the code inside of members move order. So we're going to open this. So we need to compute the position of each member relative to the move order position. So in group, we're going to add a method. So let's define a method, compute member position, which will take the target position, the target direction, and the reference to the NPC, and then we'll return a position, and we'll use this method in here in members move order. Actually, let's rename NPC to member, so we can just copy this code. If the member is the leader, we're going to return the target position. Otherwise, so let's move this code here. So we already have the target direction, no need to do this. We're going to use formation get position, and we're going to give it target position and target direction, and we can just return it. So we can just say return formation.get position, and let's remove this. So let's use this method here. So we define the direction here at the top, and for each member we're going to compute the target position using our compute member position method. So we don't need to do all of this. So we just need to call order. Okay, so let's remove this. We just need to call member.order.move and give it our target position. So now we've simplified this method, and we have a useful method here that we can use in our player order controller. Okay, so in the update method, we need to loop through the move gizmos and set their position to the position of each member in the group. However, there are a lot of edge cases here. Perhaps while we're given the move order, perhaps the number of members have changed in the group. So we need to account for that. So we'll use the same logic that we used to create the icons on the UI for the move gizmos. Let's go to onOrderMove. So here, no need to create the move gizmos. So we don't need this method, but I'm going to actually copy it. So in here, we're going to update the move gizmos list depending on the number of members in the group. So if move gizmos.count is different from NPC group.member count, then we're going to destroy all the move gizmos and recreate them from scratch. So for each member, we're going to create a new gizmo using instantiate on our move gizmo prefab, and we're going to add the gizmo to our move gizmos list. So after this if statement, we are sure that the number of gizmos is matching the number of members in the group. So we're going to loop through the list of members. So let's get our member at the I index. Then we're going to compute the target position for this member using npc.group.compute member position, and we'll give it the move order position for the target position. As for the target direction, we'll use ray.direction. This is the ray that we computed here. Then we're going to give it the reference to our member. Finally, we'll set the position of our move gizmo. So this is the line that we've been using before, but now instead of 0, we'll say move gizmo at index I dot transform that position equals not move order position, but this position here that we've computed. Okay, now for the test. So I have a group here. Let's choose a circle formation. So let's press F2. So as you can see, we have a gizmo for each group member. And when I click, then the group will move there. Since the position of these gizmos was computed by the formation, so when we get close to a wall, you can see that the positions compress like we've seen in the video where we introduced the formations and groups. So in a game like Arma, you are issuing the move order using the use key rather than the attack key. And this is very good because when you are in the move order mode, and perhaps if you see an enemy and we want to shoot, you don't want the move order to be issued then. You want to still be able to shoot while having the option to give the move order. We also want to cancel the move order. So if we press escape, we want to cancel the move order. So let's go to project settings. Let's add two actions, use and cancel, which are both going to be buttons. For the use action, let's bind it to the E key by default. So let's go to location of key and then choose E. Then for the cancel key, let's bind it to the escape key on the keyboard. So this is the first entry here. So let's go back to the code for player order controller. So here instead of on attack, let's replace it by on use. Let's add an on cancel method. So if input is pressed and the player controller is in the move order mode, we're going to do the same thing that we did in the on use method, except we will not execute the move order. So we're going to change the mode to normal and then destroy the move gizmos. Let's go back to the player controller. So in the on attack, we made sure that we were in the normal mode, but we no longer need to do this because now we have a separate action for issuing the move order. So here in the update method of the player order controller script, I've noticed sometimes that the formation compresses too much. I suspect that's because the ray direction has a value on the y-axis. So we're going to fix this. So let's define a leader direction set to ray.direction, and let's set the y component of this direction to 0, and we're going to normalize the vector and use it here instead of ray.direction. Okay, now let's control some edge cases. So let's go to the onOrder move method. So here we're going to add another check. So let's remove these comments. So if the players group has just one member, which is the player, we should not be issuing a move order. So if the member count is equal to 1 or 0, we should return. We should not be switching to the move order mode. Okay, so far our code works on all the members of the group. Now we want to select specific members and issue the move order or the hold order just to these selected members. So first, let's work on selection. In player order controller, we're going to add a list of selected indices. So let's create a hash set of the selected indices. Then let's go to the input callbacks region. Let's define a method called onSelectFollower1, which we'll call toggle selection with the index 1. And let's do the same for follower 2, follower 3, follower 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So these are the callbacks of actions that are going to be bound to the F1, F2, F3, and so on until we reach the F10 key, which is the 10th follower. So just like in Arma. So let's define the toggle selection method. Let's go down here. So if selected indices contains index, then we're going to remove that index. Otherwise, we're going to add that index. Let's work on the UI first. Then we can work on the actual functionality of only issuing orders to the selected members. Let's start by going to the project settings. I'm going to maximize this window because we're going to be adding a lot of new actions. So I'm going to add 10 actions. Select follower 1, 2, 3, and so on. And I'm going to bind each action to the function keys. So for follower 1, it's actually going to be the F2 key. As for select follower 2, it will be bound to the F3 key, and so on. Then let's add a select all method and bind it to the F1 key. Let's rebind the order move and order hold. So right now they're set to F1. So I'm going to rebind order hold to the 1 key and order move to the 2 key. Now in order to control the UI, we need a reference to the player group control UI. So let's go to the HUD, then player group UI, and let's edit the player group UI script. Let's make the group UI a singleton by defining a static instance that we're going to get and only set privately. Then in the awake method, we're going to set instance to this object. Now let's define a set selected indices, and we're going to give it a hash set of indices. So in here, we're going to loop through the list of icons. Then we're going to set a selected property on each icon to indices.contains I, and we're going to define this selected property. So I'm going to click here and generate the property and control click on it to access it. So this is the group member icon script. And here we have the selected property. So here we only need a setter. We don't need a getter. Let's define a game object, selection FX. We're going to toggle this object depending on the selection state of the icon. So we're going to say selection FX.setActive with the value of selected. Okay, so let's go back to player order controller. So here in the update method, I'm going to call the set selected indices on the player group UI and give it our selected indices. Let's also add another method here. Let's call it onSelectAll. If any member is selected, then we're going to select the rest of the members. Let's define two booleans, all selected and non-selected. So all selected will be set to selected indices count equals NPC group member count, and non-selected will be set to selected indices count equals 0. So if all members are selected, we're going to toggle the selection and deselect everyone. Otherwise, if not all are selected and not none is selected. So if we have a few members that are selected, then we're going to complete the selection. We're going to loop through the members and add each index to the selection. Let's add some sanity checks here. So we're not going to do anything if the input is released, or NPC group is null, or the NPC is not the group leader, or the group only has 1 or 0 members. So we're going to do this also in toggle selection. So we're only going to check for the group, since the input actions for select follower 1, 2, etc., since they are buttons, they will not trigger the release event by default. Okay, let's go back to the editor. Let's go to the group member icon prefab. So here I'm going to define a selection effect. Let's just add an image. Let's give it a yellow color and let's make it big. Let's make it transparent and put it at the top of the hierarchy, so it's behind the text. Let's rename it to selection FX. Let's assign the variable here, selection FX. Okay, so we should be good to go. Okay, I'm going to press F2, F3, F4, F5, F6, and F7, and every time you can see on the UI that the selection FX on each object is toggled. So I'm going to press F2 again, so I can toggle the second member on and off. I'm going to press F1, which will select everyone. Then press F1 again, which will deselect everyone. So when I press F1, it doesn't seem to toggle selection on all members. So we're going to fix this. First, let's go into group member icon. Let's hide this selection FX by default. Then let's go back to the player order controller script in onSelectAll. So if only a few members are selected, or if none are selected. So I'm going to group these conditions. If not all selected and not non-selected, or if none is selected, then we're going to select everyone. Okay, we forgot to test the new code for the move gizmos and also the code to cancel the move order. So I'm going to create a group. So I'm going to give it a circle formation. And I'm going to press 2 and I'm going to press escape. Yeah, so the escape key is also bound to the pause menu. So canceling an order is working. Let's set the formation to line and press 2, so the line is displaying correctly. Now let's change the formation to column and let's press 2. Okay, so the column is displaying correctly. Okay, now that selection is working on the UI and we have the list of selected indices. Now let's work on only issuing orders to the selected members. Okay, let's move this code to a method to keep it organized. Let's call the method moveOrderUpdate. Let's have it down here. For the move order position, perhaps we can pass it through the navigation system. Let's pass hit.point to a sample position on the nav mesh. This will allow the move order position to be correctly positioned on the nav mesh, because sometimes it can be on a wall or in weird places. So this will make sure that the move order position is actually on the nav mesh. Let's add a few comments here. So now the move gizmos will need to match the number of selected members. So if move gizmos count is different from selected indices count, then we'll destroy all move gizmos. And for each method, we'll loop through the selected indices, and for each index we'll create a new move gizmo. So now we need to change this code to actually loop through the list of selected indices. So let's define an index, which is the index of each gizmo. As for the member, it's npc.group.members at selected index. Then finally, when setting the position of each gizmo, we'll use index here. Now we need to use a different method. So this method will not do anymore. So let's control click on it. We need to actually give it the index of a member rather than the member itself. So let's duplicate the method, and instead of member, let's give it member index. So information.getPosition, let's give it our member index. As for the follower position, let's just give it the target position. So this will only be an issue for the convoy formation, but for all the other formations, it will work just fine. Let's go back to player order controller. So here, instead of member, I'm going to give it our index. And now when executing the move order, we're not going to use this method. So we're going to loop through the selected indices. Let's have an index here that we're going to increase at the end, like we did in the previous method. For each index in selected indices, we're going to do pretty much the same thing that we did in the previous method. So we're going to get the selected member. So we're going to order the member to move to the position of the move gizmo that's associated with this member. So that should do it for the code. Now let's test and make sure that everything is working as we expect. So I'm going to press F1 and press 2, then press E, and this should order the members to move there. So I'm going to press F1 again and only select the second member with F2. Then I'm going to press 2. It seems that we have a bit of a problem here. So I'm going to press E. So let's select the third and fourth member and let's press 2. Yeah, so perhaps it's not a good idea to use the formation to compute the position of each member. So let's have our own function to do that. Let's create our own function here. So I'm going to steal the code from the line formation, or you know what? Better yet, what we can do actually is have a reference to a line formation. So we can have a reference to a line formation that we're going to use for all the movement orders. So with this reference, what I'm going to do here, so let's go down here to the compute member position. So we'll use the get position of the line formation. For follower index, we'll give it index. For follower position, we'll just give it target position. For follower count, we'll give it selected indices count. For leader position, we'll give it a target position. And for leader direction, we'll give it target direction. And we'll return this value. And in here, in the move order update method, instead of doing this, so we're going to comment this line out. We're going to say P equals compute member position, and we'll give it move order position and leader direction and index. First, let's assign the line formation. Let's go to player controller and open the prefab. In player order controller, let's set line formation to our line and let's run the game. Okay, so I have my group here. I'm going to select one member and then press 2. Okay. So I'm going to press E. So this member will move to the assigned position. And then let's select other members like 5 and 6. Let's press 2. Okay, so you can see that the line formation is displaying correctly. And in most cases, so for some formations, it's not appropriate to project them forward to the target position. Like for the convoy formation, it doesn't make sense. So it makes more sense to use a line formation, for example. I'm going to order 5 and 6 to move there. So I'm going to press E and they're going to move. Okay, so it seems to be working. I'm going to press F1. So everyone is selected. Then I'm going to press 2 and press E. So everyone now will move there. And then I'm going to press F1 again and this deselect everyone. So if I press 2, nothing will happen. And now if I issue a hold position order, so we still need to take into account the selected indices when issuing the hold order position. Let's go to move order update. So here it seems that I'm getting some errors on the console because some selected indices may be out of bounds of the members list here. So let's go to toggle selection. Let's make sure that index is within the members count. So if index is greater than or equal to npc.group.member count, we're going to return. Also in the move order update, we need to update the list of selected indices. So perhaps during the move order, some members of the group may have been removed from the group. So maybe some indices in the hash set will be invalid. So we're going to use system link and use the remove where method. So we're going to remove every index that meets this condition. Index is greater or equal to npc.group.member count. And in case the npc.group is null, so if the player has been removed from the group, we're going to clear the list of selected indices. So this should take care of the rest. So if the list is empty or we removed some elements, then the gizmos will be destroyed and created again. And then we'll be assigning the correct position for each move gizmo. Okay, now let's work on the hold order. So if input is pressed, and NPC has a group and NPC is the group leader. So here we're going to use a method. Let's call it toggle hold order. Instead of toggling the hold order, let's do something that will be both easier for us as developers and also easy for the player who's going to play the game. Let's have a separate button for holding and a separate button for falling in. So no need to define a method here. So we're going to loop through the list of selected indices. So just in case an index is not valid, we're going to continue. Then for each member, we're going to call hold position on its order. And you know what? Let's just give it the NPC position, because after playing Arma, in Arma, I realized that when you give a member of your team the order to hold position and your formation is far away from that member, then the member does not go to the last known formation position. They just hold their current position. So this is what we're going to do now. And then let's duplicate this method. Let's call it onOrder falling. So when we give this order, we're going to call cancel on the order of each member, or I should say each selected member in the group. So let's define the order falling action. Let's go to project settings. So here we have order hold and order move. So let's duplicate order move and rename it order falling. So let's think about the keyboard inputs. So the hold position is at 1, order move is at 2. So let's have order falling at 3. Okay, so I have my group here. I'm going to select the third member and issue a hold position order. So I'm going to press 1. Oh yeah, so you know what happened when I tell group member to hold position? They're actually holding my position. Because we're using npc.position, we're going to press 1. Okay, so let's fix this. So when given order to hold, so here we should actually, so let's reorganize this. Let's have a member variable and let's use it here. So member.order hold position, member.position, not npc, because npc is actually the player's character. Okay, so let's do it again. I'm going to click on Kevin and order him to hold position. So we are all moving except for Kevin. So I'm going to press 3 to order Kevin to fall in. So he's going to come back to the formation. Okay, let's just work on the behavior tree of Sentry. Let's go to the idle branch. Okay, so this is the idle branch. So this is hold order execution and this is move order execution. So when we have a move order, the character will get the order target position here and go to it. So in go to, let's use run. So let's set run to true. We don't really need to keep getting the order target position and keep calling go to. We can do it just once. So let's remove the repeater and the sequence. We don't need those. So let's make it a simple sequence here. Okay. So now I'm going to select a subset of my followers, 2, 5, 7, 8, and I'm going to press 2 to move them. And I'm going to press E and they're going to move while running. Okay, so we have achieved something that's similar to what's done in Arma 3, and we have a much more fleshed out group control UI. That's it for this episode. See you in the next one. If you like this video and the content on this channel, then you can head over to the Ko-fi page of the channel. For as little as $5 a month, you can keep this channel going strong and help me produce more content and deliver much more value to you guys. So form the phalanx, defend the line, and thank you so much for your support.